Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Kari and today I'm doing 5 obscure books. I got to thinking and I realized that there are quite a few books out there that I don't talk about a lot. So today I'm going to talk about 5 of the books that I have not heard mentioned on BookTube and I myself have not mentioned them. The first one is Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurier. Du Maurier is particularly well known for Rebecca, which I've also read and which was also phenomenal. But I actually read Jamaica Inn before I read Rebecca. I read it back in high school and for whatever reason I remember that it had a purple cover. Don't ask me why, I remember weird things. Anyway, Jamaica Inn is about a young woman who goes to the coast of Cornwall, I think, and if I remember correctly there's either a murder or a dark secret. Again, it's been years since I've read this book, but I loved it when I read it. The writing was very eloquent and the atmosphere was incredibly dark, which was perfect since it was about some sort of dark secret, be it murder or other. I definitely love that book. I own 3 other Daphne du Maurier books. Surprisingly not Jamaica Inn. So at some point I would like to own Jamaica Inn and read it again. But for the time being, I just remember it being a phenomenal book, and if you have read Rebecca and liked it, I definitely recommend you read Jamaica Inn. The next one is The Poison Garden by Karen Harper. This is the first book in a 9-book series by Harper that starts when Elizabeth is still a princess. It starts sometime, well, before 1558. I just don't specifically remember the exact date. All it says is 5 years later, which does not help me. Anyway, it starts sometime between 1553 and 1558 because it takes place when Elizabeth is between 20 and 25 and when her sister Mary is on the throne. Elizabeth, as a princess, has to figure out who is trying to kill her and many of her supporters, why, and she does it all essentially on her own. She does have help from some of her ladies-in-waiting and particularly her governess, who is turned into her Lady of the Closet, whatever the actual name equivalent of that is, I can't think of it right now, but Cat Ashley, who was with Elizabeth until Cat died. I love this series. This one, they all have some sort of different spelling of one of the words. For example, there's one called The Queen's Christmas, and Queen has an E after the N, as well as the 2 that are normally in it. So that's just a fun little perk, but also I loved watching the characters develop because it does cover a period of about 30 years over the course of the 9 books. And so watching Elizabeth develop as a character and a ruler and watching the people around her develop was really fun, and this was one of the first big series that I read when I started to get into Elizabeth. Then we have A Burnable book by Bruce Holsinger. This book takes place in 1385 in London. And let's see, John of Gaunt is involved, Richard II is in mortal peril, predominantly because there is a book known as the Burnable book that could basically take down the monarchy. And we follow Gower, who is a friend of Chaucer, and Gower is an attorney? Well, sort of. Gower is a professional trader in information with connections high and low. If I remember correctly, it sounds a bit like he was an attorney, but either way, we follow him and Chaucer gets involved in this. Yes, Canterbury Tales Chaucer. This book was amazing. I read it my 1 year of law school and ended up recommending it to my torts professor, who then recommended me The Instance of the Finger Post, which is also a phenomenal book. But this one just takes so many twists and turns and the setting is immaculate. It is amazing. It's not a time period I usually read about, but I'm incredibly glad that I did read this book, and to be honest, it was a complete title buy. Not a cover, not a synopsis, but I was so intrigued by a Burnable book that I couldn't not buy it, and it was well worth the read. Then we have The Gospels of Loki by Joanne M. Harris. This book, as it might sound, follows Loki through basically all of his exploits. Watch him as he goes through everything that we know about him, but it's from his point of view, sort of the villain's point of view, as opposed to Thor, the hero, or Odin, the not very nice Allfather. And this one took a little bit longer for me to get through, but I was also reading I think 6 other books at the same time, and this one didn't capture me as much as the other ones did. That said, I think it still does a fantastic job of providing a narrative of Loki himself without necessarily tainting it, so to speak, with the points of view of the other gods or goddesses. This is straight up Loki, it is all mischief, it is hilarious, and the book does do a good job of capturing that mischievous spirit and the line between malice and beneficence that Loki seems to embody. So I did really enjoy this, and if you're interested in Norse mythology, specifically Loki, this is a great place to start. And then the last book is Cabin 102 by Sherry Garland. I read this book in 7th grade. This book, from what I recall, because like I said, 7th grade, I was 13, so that was 13 years ago, but I remember it being really good. It is about a boy who goes on a cruise and discovers a ghost of a Arawak Indian girl. There we go, I wanted to say Tahiti. Arawak girl, and has to basically help her find peace. This book does a great job of showing bits of Arawak culture because they were killed very, very quickly, specifically by disease, I think. If I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments. So I really enjoyed this book simply because it's a quick read. Even in 7th grade, this was a quick read, but it also provided a very different setting than what I was used to at the time. It's on a ship, it's in the Caribbean, and there's a ghost, which is nothing that I would usually read. But I absolutely loved this book, as is evidenced by the fact that 13 years later I went and bought a copy. Those are 5 of my more obscure books. I hope you enjoyed. If you've read any of these, have heard any of these, let me know down below, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.